Here's what's coming up on your horizon. Well, people find themselves in prison for any number of reasons, virtually all of them bad. Yet what happens inside those prison walls doesn't have to be. Today, we take a closer look at a program that gives both the inmates and the animals they train a second chance. Stay with us for the Dogs of Lexington on Oklahoma Horizon.
Oklahoma Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education.
Oklahoma's investment in career tech provides more than nationally recognized technology education and training. It produces solid financial returns for the state's economic future. Oklahoma Career Tech, elevating our economy.
And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping good people grow good things. And now, from the Career Tech Studios in Stillwater, here's your host, Rob McClendon.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here on Horizon. Well, life in prison is not enjoyable, and it's not supposed to be. Yet a program in Oklahoma's Lexington prison is bringing man and animal together, giving renewed hope for both and improving the quality of life for all. With some background on the program and the documentary about it, here's our Andy Barth.
Well, second chances are sometimes hard to come by. Yet in 1990, Sister Pauline Quinn started a dog training prison program in Oklahoma. The purpose? To have inmates train dogs from abused and neglected situations for adoption, giving purpose to the inmates and a second chance for dogs with a bleak outlook. The program has had great success and is featured in a documentary called The Dogs of Lexington, highlighting the bond between dog and human.
They're known as man's best friend, loyal no matter what. And in Lexington prison, they're making 25 to life a little easier.
And I give them to the guys up front. We take these dogs in, they're just jerking us down here, and then 2-3 weeks later, these dogs are walking around this track obediently, doing some of this agility equipment. It just still blows my mind that it's the same dog. It's just incredible. And I just get a big old kick out of that, and then when they find a good home, I even get a bigger kick out of that.
Lee Fairchild is the director of Friends for Folks at Lexington Prison and says the bond between man and dog is life-changing.
The positive changes are definitely with the guys in the program. It gives them a responsibility, taking care of something, loving something, because there's not much love in a place like a prison. It gives them something that they can show unconditional love for, and the dog shows unconditional love to them.
And for inmate Todd Saunders, training dogs is all about giving back.
You know, some of these dogs are on their last legs, so we're in a sense saving their lives, and they're giving us purpose while we're here. And I mean that in itself is a blessing to us. Man, this program is really just about I mean, to me, it's giving back. I've taken so much in my lifetime from the community and from my loved ones. And, you know, I know my family, they're proud of me for giving back.
Sean Moore has trained several dogs in the program and says whether it's a dog or a person, everyone deserves a second chance.
Regardless of background, though, regardless of where you come from, you can rise. You can become very good at something. You can excel. Just because you come from a puppy mill or low income or whatever, that is not what chains you down. What chains you down is your mind.
Veterinarian John Otto works with Friends for Folks and says this program comes down to one thing.
So it's this relationship, this human-animal bond that gives the opening for the first time sometimes in our life to love and receiving love, to giving love, and then to learning. And then that's where this change and transformation occurs. It's a beautiful thing. Without it, this program would not exist.
Now, when we return, the founder of Friends for Folks joins me in studio, as well as the trainer and producer of the Emmy Award-winning documentary.
You're watching Oklahoma Horizon, featuring some of the good things that are happening in the great state of Oklahoma.
So, gentlemen, I have to ask, what's it like when an offender that's new to the program gets their first dog?
When they get to go back there the first time and they get a dog, you just can't even describe the joy in their face.
they got a dog to work with, they get to work back, and the only way to describe it is a glorious dog park because it's got the agility equipment, it's got a track to work your dog. It also has a little pool there, so it's a place to get away from the rigors and the prison and all the razor wire and all that kind of stuff and get back there and work your dog and be more humanized, I guess is the best way to put it.
And I would think that would have to be important, helping not just the dogs but also the offender.
There's no doubt about it. I've said it before, it's almost like a snowball effect. You get people that get in the program, they start getting the responsibilities of feeding, brushing, taking care of the dog, doing all the things that I have them do. They have to walk 10 times around the track every day with their dog. They have to work so much basic obedience a day with their dog. I just recently had a guy not long ago that hadn't finished his GED, had been struggling with it for years. The other guys, as mentors, helped him with his dog, and then they also got him going up to the school getting his GED. That happens quite often. And then a lot of people, once they get their GED, they start going to college, or they get enrolled in the career tech and HVAC, cabinet making, various skills that if and when they get out, that'll be beneficial to them in the future. And plus, we do a lot of tours there at Lexington, and some of the guys, they've learned to speak in front of those tours, and then next thing you know, they might be in Toastmasters. And then they learn to speak. Yeah. And those are the guys that whenever we have tours and we have groups come in, that they speak to those groups. And so when they do get out and they go in for a job interview, they'll know what to say and that kind of stuff, and they'll have the skills to keep them out of prison and become productive, tax-paying citizens. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, learning the soft skills. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, John, you're a veterinarian. I want you to take me through how this program began.
Really essentially began in 1981 with Sister Pauline Quinn starting it in Washington State. Then my mentor, Dr. Grant Turnwald, helped start it in 1990 after hearing people from the Delta Societies talk about the prison dog program. And he thought it would be a very good idea to start one here in Oklahoma. So he went and met with some people down at Lexington Prison and began it in 1990. And then about 1996, he was going to become dean of Virginia's Tech Vet School, or associate dean, and he had me come down there to look at the program. And I was extremely reluctant to go down there because my dad had been in the FBI for nearly 30 years, and I didn't want anything to do with, really pretty serious offenders, and the things that had happened. So I said no twice. I did not want to go down. And then what I ended up doing was I prayed about it for a solid day, and then at the end of that day, I just felt like it was the right thing to do. So I told Grant that I would go down with him. On the trip back, Grant kind of said, well, I'm going to be leaving. Would you be interested in taking over this program? And I said, yes, I would. I would be interested. That began in March of '96, and then from there, I've worked with different program coordinators, Jack Cottrell, Tracy Beckelheimer, and now Lee Fairchild, over time. I've been through several wardens, and now it's been 19 years of volunteering down there and working, and now, as we've talked about earlier, we're taking the program to Mabel Bassett Correctional Center. And so what I do as a veterinarian is I help with medical issues that Lee may have questions with or offender might have questions with. I'll go down and give a class on parasitism and first aid and talk about cleanliness of a kennel or how to treat an animal that has an allergic reaction or how we take care of parasites, internal, external. So what's neat about that, though, is it starts to get them thinking in terms of not only caring for the pet, but medically looking at it too, so it's a different level for them. There's such an interesting relationship between the pet that usually comes from a shelter or a rescue or an organization, and they've often had a very similar background to the offender where usually their life hasn't been very easy at all. And then you see this animal and the offender get together and you see this transformation occur and you see it in their eye. And that's what's so magical about it.
And I think that is such an important point that not only are the offenders getting a second chance with these animals, the animals are actually getting a second chance as well, just like Duke did.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about Duke.
Well, Duke is a 7-year-old standard poodle. He was actually donated to the prison. He was about 16 weeks old when he was picked up. The offender that had him is Bill Gasaway, and I hope Bill's okay right now because he hates being without his dog, and he's done a fantastic job, as you see with Duke. Actually, I had a certified trainer come there that could certify Duke in AKC, Canine Good Citizen, and we did that with Duke there. And then I took Duke out myself to Canine Sports Academy there in the Goldsby, Oklahoma area and put him through a class for his Therapy Dog International certificate. So he's Therapy Dog certified and Canine Good Citizen. So he's just about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
He's a representative of the Friends for Folks. He's our mascot there. So he comes out, and if you've never seen it, it's really a sight to behold. He'll run the obstacle course by himself. And when he goes flying over, the last part of it is a jump. He looks like a deer going over. It just looks really cool. So we have a lot of tours, like I said before, and almost everybody at the tours, I said, make sure you're watching there at the end. Everybody gets a big old kick out of that.
Yeah, and you did bring along with you a mascot that was made, and this was made inside the prison?
It was made at Mabel Bassett Correctional Center. Yeah, yes, and that's a little dog that represents Star, one of the dogs that was down there years ago that ended up saving a lady's life.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit about Star too, because you also have this children's book that is fairly new. Or
right,
recent.
just came out this fall, and it's called Marvin's Shining Star, and it's a story about a offender named Marvin, who's a good friend of mine, that trained a dog named Star that was brought in from the Norman Animal Shelter. And when he trained her, she ended up becoming one of the best search and rescue dogs that they've ever had. And Marvin told me Star could find him no matter where he was in Lexington. He could hide anywhere, and Star could find him. So it was a very good dog. But anyway, a lady who had Alzheimer's drifted off her unit, became lost. They spent 10 hours with other search and rescue teams and infrared helicopter, couldn't find this lady. And it was in the fall, and if they didn't find her soon, she had Alzheimer's, she was going to die of probably exposure or dehydration. So it was imperative they found her. So Tracy Beckelheimer got Star, and it's just like a Walt Disney story. And they let Star smell her pillowcase, and in 20 minutes, Star found her down in a ravine. So it's a really amazing story, and we tell it in the film Dogs of Lexington. You'll see actual footage of Marvin and Star in there.
Now, Greg, you're a filmmaker. I want to hear about the actual production of doing the Dogs of Lexington. What was it like shooting behind the wall, and what was it like meeting some of the people you did?
Well, this is one of our community projects that our college, Oklahoma City Community College, does, and I'm the director of the film and video program there. So our students, and you know, it sounds like John hooked me in the same way that Grant hooked you. In other words, you take them down to the prison and have a talk there. That's our first talk, was just, well, come here, just let me show you the program. And then once you see what this does, then it's like, how can you not be hooked? It was a thrilling thing for our students to work on, because, you know, part of what you're trying to do in a film is, especially a film like this, is you're trying to discover this story as you start to work on it. So we came down to just talk to everybody out by the obstacle course and interview everyone. And then once we did that, we said, well, but there's also training that happens in yourself. So, well, that's something else we should shoot. So we shot that. And then, well, there's a dog named Sarge, and he's going to be going to the vet center. So we should follow that. So it's a thrill to see young people that you've taught in college be able to go out and then apply what they've learned right there to capture these moments. Then we're able to put together in a story that has at least moved the DOC enough to be able to open up this program into a new prison. Because what Lee's talking about, the look in the eyes, well, we caught that in that last night. Like, what's it like for a woman that's been behind bars for 16 years and never touched a dog at a time? What's that like the first time? Ultimately, from talking with them, and you may end up in prison and feel in a real hopeless place, like, because you're there, and it can feel like the end of the road. But if you got a dog that's got a problem, and you are working with that dog, and lo and behold, after however long it takes, that dog changes, well, suddenly you start to believe in change yourself. And then once you start to believe that things can change for a dog, well, why can't they change for me? And that starts to give you hope. And that's the most beautiful gift that this program brings to all the people inside the prisons, to the animals, and then the animals go out, and then they bring hope to all the people they come in contact with. Like Sarge at the vet center, it's like all those guys lining up to give Sarge a walk. They still talk to him. We have one of the people we interviewed in the Mabel Bassett, Daryl Winters, was talking about how Yeah, his wife works there, and they got this little dog named Sergeant. Everybody just loves to take that dog out for a walk. So John has a name for it. He calls it the ripple effect. This good action just keeps producing more and more and more good out into the world.
Now, we have the Dogs of Lexington. We're about to have a second film called and Greg, I'll let you finish me up. What was the new film?
Basset Tales. That's John's title for the film about the dogs going into Mabel Bassett, and then also following out the dogs. So we actually are able to talk with someone that's been through the program, Daryl and Rick, and also General Aragon. I mean, her point is that any vet that wants to have a service dog should be able to have a service dog. You'll be able to hear from a vet what that's like, the help that a dog can be to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we return, we will look how this program is not only changing lives, but attitudes outside the prison gate. Want to share something you've seen here today? Well, all of our episodes are streaming on our YouTube channel at Oklahoma Horizon TV. Or you can subscribe to our weekly free podcasts on iTunes. Now, John, you mentioned that your father was in the FBI for quite a few years. What is his attitudes for this program, and have they changed?
Yeah, that's been profound to watch his change, because when I grew up, he said rehabilitation of criminals was an oxymoron. Basically, it just doesn't happen. And so to watch him, and when he got to meet Marvin too, and watch his change through his relationship with Marvin was incredible, because for 2 years I really didn't even tell him I was going down to Lexington prison. I told my mom, but I didn't tell my dad, because I knew his opinion and his feelings towards, you know, the incarcerated in general. So I really kind of kept it hush-hush. Now, eventually, you know, they had that stained glass shop, and I would bring stained glass back as gifts for my mom and others, and then eventually my mom told my dad I was going down to the prison to work with this dog program, and he really didn't say much about it, but as they would come out and visit us here in Oklahoma, I would take my dad to go see Marvin up at the Minimum Correctional Center in Oklahoma City. And he actually made a cuckoo clock that was out of stained glass, and it had stopped working. So we took that clock up there because Marvin could fix it, because he built the clock. And so my dad got to meet Marvin there, and he went into the prison, which I was really surprised about that he would do that. And he got to meet Marvin, and then eventually, as we talked, Marvin was released and paroled by the governor. So, and then once Marvin got out, he and I started working at we have a little hobby farm, and we were hit by the tornado back about 5 years ago and destroyed our barn and dock and fencing. So Marvin and I spent basically 2 years repairing that place. Well, by then my parents had moved out here, and my dad is living here, and he would help as well. So he and Marvin would be working together out in the fields, and Marvin came out every Saturday, and we worked for about 8 hours. And I'll never forget this one scene where we were in our house having lunch, and a football game was on. It was in the fall, and Marvin loved football. My dad loves football. So there, the two of them are sitting in our family room, and I'm making these barbecue sandwiches, and they're laughing, and they're talking about the game. And I thought, here, I wish I had a picture of somebody that was, you know, former director of the FBI, and Marvin, who was in for murder, you know, incarcerated. And here they are sitting together in a family room laughing and talking. And I just thought, you know, I just thought to myself, it just really epitomizes the strength and power of this program, of what it can do, not only for the offender, but for society that looks in and often is prejudiced, you know, and sometimes rightly so, what people have done and, you know, crime acts they've done. So it was an amazing thing to watch that relationship develop. And my dad, it's really fun to listen to him talk about Marvin too, because he says there are very few people he had ever met that basically said that, yeah, I did what I did, and I needed to pay for it, and I did. And not that he ever made any excuses about what he had done. He said it was wrong and it should be, and he needed to pay for it. And my dad said that was extremely unusual to find somebody like that. And I think that's why Marvin did so well, because he accepted what he did, and he didn't make any excuses about it.
I do want us to show some of your dad's comments from the video, The Dogs of Lexington, because I think it really shows how attitudes are changing about this program.
It's ironic for me to have spent a lifetime in law enforcement and have you come up with a rehabilitation program that seems to have real, honest-to-God progress. And I can't imagine a more unusual circumstance than having, been brought to this rehabilitation program by a son that in all the years that we talked about this sort of thing, I gave you an impression that rehabilitation, in fact, did not work. So I'm just as amazed and happy to be part of this as I can be. I'm glad I'm alive to see it.
Well, we see how this program affects people outside the prison, but what about the offenders that are working with these dogs? What type of changes do you see?
Well, the changes that I see more than anything is they probably soften up a little bit, because not much love in a prison, to be honest. And now they've got a dog that gives unconditional love. And they pet and love on the dog and take care of the dog's needs and work with the dog, and the dog improves as they go along. And it makes them a softer person. They're less inclined to get in little petty squabbles with somebody else. When you put a lot of men together, a lot of testosterone together kind of thing, you do have some fights and that kind of stuff. And we probably no probably about it, we do have less issues on the unit where the dogs are than anywhere else. And those guys, they just keep everything cleaner. They don't get involved in little petty jealousies that go on in the prison life, and they get softer and just are a lot more responsible and a lot more careful. And then they start getting that back to that hope that, if I keep doing things right for a few years, I've got a chance to get out of here maybe. And it's just a snowball effect, doing the right things more than anything.
I guess we should note that while Duke has stayed with you, most of these dogs, really all these dogs, go through the program and then are placed outside with people.
That's exactly right. We keep them anywhere from a minimum of a month, sometimes up to 4 months. Some of the dogs that we get from the shelters do have a few issues. We don't take human aggressive dogs, but we get dog aggressive dogs, and we have a high success ratio working with them. They usually go to the animal shelter because of some reason, and usually it's something that we can work through. A lot of them are shy, and they develop a lot of confidence by working the obstacle course, being with somebody almost 24/7 that's loving on them. Plus, they've got 119 other guys on the unit that pet them and love on them. So that helps a lot with the shy, timid dogs. And then if it's a kind of dog that gets in your trash, you got somebody there keeping them out of the trash, and develops a habit. Just like a human can develop a habit after 3 weeks, dogs can develop not doing something bad after a couple, 3 weeks, the same way. So crate train, house train, we teach them to walk properly on leash in the heel position without pulling. We also have a cat there. A lot of people asked about the cat, but we don't want to adopt one of our dogs out to someone that's elderly and they're walking along and a cat runs along. They chase after the cat and pull that person down, so we want them to get used to cats also. Then we teach them sits, stays, and downs. And the inmates kind of get in some little competitions on that. They don't get carried away with it. And I kind of encourage that too, because they want to see how long the dog will down and stay, how long the dog will sit and stay, and various things like that. So that's kind of neat. We actually just had a little competition the other day. We set a crate up and see which dog could get to the crate the fastest and go inside and close the crate door. Duke would have probably won that, except his offender was so excited that he got in there so fast they forgot to close the door. Because Duke would stay there, as you can see. He's about as good as they get. You know what I'm talking about, you don't you?
Yeah, before we came out into the studio, we were all sitting and visiting, and you had him sitting, and everyone was rubbing on him. He never moved. He would turn his head, but he never moved. He's a good boy. You're a good boy. So, John, what happens from here?
Well, one of my hopes and prayers is that it will continue in not only here in Oklahoma in the veterinary profession, but abroad, that the veterinary profession will embrace it as it moves across the country, and it is. And Sister Pauline and I were able to speak at the Southwest Veterinary Symposium and show the dogs of Lexington there and to hundreds of veterinarians. And that's my goal and hope, is to take it within my profession across the country and then hopefully internationally as well. And the same is true with the book, though, as well. I'm really hoping to help the children of the incarcerated as well, which 70% of children of the incarcerated end up becoming incarcerated. So one of the things we're working on, it looks like it's going to happen in this state, is to get this book to every elementary school and library in the state and start with reading programs to help kind of break this cycle. The #1 deterrent to incarceration is education. So we have shown that, stats have shown that. So if we can get these kids reading and talking about some of these things that are going on in the home, hopefully we'll stop this cycle from occurring. So that's kind of it's a twofold thing for me, really. It's working with the offenders and then especially the children of the incarcerated, and then within my profession too.
Yeah, it almost sounds like justice reform at its very best. Gentlemen, I want to appreciate each of you coming in, and best of luck with the new film.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to see it.
Yeah, you'll like it.
Yeah. Next time on Oklahoma Horizon, we'll look at the impact spring rains are having on some key industries and the communities that depend upon them.
When the lakes are full, our streams are running, we're getting stuck and we're pulling each other out. I'm not going to call calf rope for a long time.
Is our drought behind us? On Oklahoma Show for the Heartland, Oklahoma Horizon. Thanks for including us as part of your day. I'm Rob McClendon. Hope to see you back here next week.